We're going to begin this morning in Psalm 119 and verse 73. The verse in the first half says, "Thy hands have made me and fashioned me. Give me understanding that I may learn thy commandments." I want us to look this morning at the subject of ape-men. Ever since Charles Darwin published On the Origin of Species in 1859, evolutionists have rushed to find the missing link in human evolution. The history of this search is not the story of true science. It's a history filled with lies and hoaxes. This has been exposed in many books. One of those is Bones of Contention, Controversies in the Search for Human Origins by Roger Lewin. And here's another one, Bones of Contention, A Creationist Assessment of Human Fossils by Martin Leibniz. Another is In the Minds of Men, Darwin and the New World Order by Ian Taylor. Adam and Evolution by Michael Pittman. Icons of Evolution, Science or Myth by Jonathan Wells. The Bone Peddlers, Selling Evolution by William R. Fix. So, consider some statements by the evolutionists themselves. Francis Hitching said the search for man's past has been littered with vain hopes and invented hominids. The word hominid refers to humans or relatives to humans. I gradually came to realize that the presentation of fossil evidence for human evolution has long been and still is more of a market phenomenon than a disinterested scientific exercise, says William Fix. And this from Andrew Hill. Compared to other sciences, the mythic element is greatest in paleoanthropology. Mythic element, myths, he's saying. Solly Zuckerman, we'll quote more later from some of these, but they said the study of human ancestry is a field of science mainly concerned with conjecture and speculation. As we're going to see, the drawings and models of ape-men are fiction. They're lies created by men and women who want to debunk the Bible. It's not coming out of science. The field of human anthropology is filled with self-seeking, deception, and carnal strife. The rivalry between teams of paleontologists, those who dig up fossils and study those, that rivalry has been described as like a football match. They said it wasn't purely a group of disinterested scientists trying to get it right, says Virginia Morell in the book Ancestral Passions. Roger Lewin documents the amazing bickering between top paleoanthropologists since the days of Piltdown Man to the discovery of Lucy. And we need to understand that major ape-man discoveries result in fame and fortune. Now, you can see a bit of a motive in that. Louis Leakey was the first paleontology rock star. He enjoyed fame greater than any other scientist. He dined at the White House. He was granted wealthy contracts to advertise Rolex watches. You can see a bit of a reason to promote these hoaxes. Donald Johanson, discoverer of the Lucy bones, was thrust immediately into the limelight. He was invited to join exclusive clubs and founded his own international institute. After more than a century of research, there still is no scientifically proven link between ape and man. The charts of human evolution in museums and textbooks have dotted lines showing that the missing links are still missing. And here they're all being pointed out. Quite a few missing links there. So we're going to spend some time this morning looking at 6 ape-men hoaxes. And then we're going to look at one other one the Litoli footprints at the end here. So, first off, we have Haeckel's Ape-men. The father of Ape-man research is Ernst Haeckel, who was a German disciple of Charles Darwin. Haeckel believed so strongly in the mythical ape-man, even though there was zero proof, that he described what the creature would look like and approved of an artist's drawing of an ape-man family. So this is all coming out of just what he's imagining in his mind. Without a single shred of evidence, Haeckel had already named the creature Pithecanthropus alalis. Speechless ape-man, in other words. He published his own drawings of the supposed evolution of man. One chart showed apes becoming more human, but he doctored the drawings. So as you look up at number 1, that's supposed to be a man. Number 10, that's an ape, and it's supposed to show how you get from 10 down to 1. He made the men look more like apes, and he made the apes look more like men. He doctored them, in other words. Obviously, this isn't science. This is what you call propaganda. Haeckel is the man who created the embryo chart. Maybe you've seen this. It's very popular in textbooks to teach children. They show the different animals' embryos and then man embryos and say, look, they're the same. He's the man who created that, and we're going to look at that in more detail in another session to do justice to it, because that is a hoax as well. But now let's go to the Java Man next. Eugene Dubois was a student of Ernst Haeckel who wanted to find evidence of the ape-man. He began his search on the island of Java when he was assigned there with the Dutch army. In 1891 and 92, he found a few bones. Dubois found an ape skull in 1891, and then the next year he found a human thigh bone about 15 meters away. He also found a couple of teeth. These are the bones, the actual bones that Dubois found. Now, if you found that, would you be able to construct from that much about what this creature looked like? There's a bit of imagination going on. There's no evidence, of course, that the skull and thigh bone belonged to the same individual or even the same creature. Yet Dubois and Haeckel announced that they had found the missing ape-man, and it had a small ape head and long human legs. That's what you got from that, isn't it? It was named Pithecanthropus erectus. This means ape-man that walks upright. Haeckel had a life-size model made of the mythical creature and exhibited it throughout Europe. Java Man appeared in books, magazines, newspapers, and museums as evidence for evolution. Yet it was a lie. Not only was there never any evidence that the skull and the thigh bone belonged to the same creature, but Dubois had also found 2 other skulls in the same place as the so-called Java Man skull and had kept this a secret. And this is because the 2 skulls were obviously fully human. Dubois had not found an ape-man. He had found real men living in the same location as apes, just as people do today in places like Africa, India, and Nepal. Apes and humans living in close proximity to each other. All right, next we look at the Piltdown Man. Piltdown Man was presented as a missing link in human evolution for 40 years. It was used as evidence for human evolution by scientists and teachers throughout the world. In 1912, the British Natural History Museum said that bones of an ape-man had been found in a gravel pit in Sussex, England. The bones had been discovered by this amateur fossil hunter, Charles Dawson, and by Arthur Woodward of the British Natural History Museum. The gravel pit was at a place called Piltdown, so the bones were named Piltdown Man. The bones were examined by renowned scientists who claimed that the creature was a missing link. These men included Arthur Woodward, Grafton Elliott Smith, Arthur Keith, and Pierre Teilhard. Scientists are shown in this picture examining Piltdown Man bones. And here they are in the gravel pit itself, along with a goose. Piltdown was given the scientific name of Anthropus dawsoni, which means Dawson's Dawn Man. I guess if you give it a Latin name, it sounds just a little more legitimate. Piltdown played a large role in proving evolution during the first half of the 20th century. What do we mean by that? Well, the New York Times published the findings on December the 22nd, 1912. The headline was, "Darwin Theory is Proved True." And the subheading, "English scientists say the skull found in Sussex establishes human descent from apes." The Illustrated London News, December 1912, published a drawing of Piltdown on its cover. Popular Science magazine, many years later, had a report about Piltdown Man, so-called proving evolution, and drawings and models depicted Piltdown as an ape-man. A model in the British Museum of Natural History was seen by tens of thousands of people during the 41 years that it was on display. Piltdown was used as evidence that the Bible is not true. Books were published by scientists. Arthur Woodward published The Earliest Englishman. The cover said, "A graphic first-hand account of the discovery of Piltdown Man, one of the most famous of the links between ape and man." The discoverers of the Piltdown bones were given many prestigious awards. They were knighted by the Queen of England, and in 1953, the British Museum ran new tests on the bones and concluded that they were fake. Someone had taken an orangutan jawbone and part of a human skull. They filed it down. They treated it with iron solution and chromic acid to make them look old. The hoax was probably perpetrated by Charles Dawson, but the mystery was never solved on this earth. God knows who it is. There goes another so-called missing link. Now we come to the Nebraska Man. In 1917, a single tooth was discovered in Nebraska by a rancher named Harold Cook. In 1922, Cook sent the tooth to Henry Osborn, one of America's foremost fossil experts. He was the president of the American Museum of Natural History. He and other experts said that it was the tooth of an ape-man. Again, notice what they got out of a tooth. It's an awful lot. No doubt they wanted their own ape-man to compete with Piltdown Man in England. Again, some rivalry there. And so they gave it a scientific name. All of them have to have a scientific name. Hesperopithecus, which means ape of the Western world. And once again, a lot of publicity. In June 1922, the Illustrated London News published a drawing of Nebraska Man, his wife, and their tools. Wow, all from a tooth. That year, Henry Osborn said the Nebraska Man, quote, "constitutes irrefutable evidence that the man-ape wandered over from Asia into North America." Really? Osborn used Nebraska Man in his newspaper articles and radio broadcasts to cast doubt upon the Bible, and that was its goal. In 1925, he published The Earth Speaks to Bryan. You've heard of William Jennings Bryan in the famous Scopes trials. He's a Christian who believed in creation, and Osborn said the Nebraska Man tooth speaks volumes of truth. Nebraska Man and Piltdown Man were used at the Scopes trial in 1925 as evidence that evolution is true and that it should be taught in public schools. Scopes trials was a major turning point in American history. It convinced many people that evolution is true and the Bible is wrong. It became popular for the press to mock the Bible, and it became acceptable for evolution to be taught in public schools. But as we've seen, Piltdown Man turned out to be a hoax, and so did Nebraska Man. It turned out it was a pig's tooth. After additional bones of the creature were found, Nebraska Man turned out to be nothing but a pig. There goes another of the missing links. Let's go back in time a little earlier than that now to Neanderthal man. We all talk about how, we've heard talk about we're not Neanderthals, That comes from a real valley in Germany, the Neanderthal Valley. In 1860, a year after Darwin's Origin of Species was published, human fossil bones were found in that valley in Germany. Additional bones were found later in other parts of Europe and elsewhere. And in 1907, Ernst Haeckel claimed that Neanderthal was an ape-man. In 1908, French scientist Marcelin Bolla also called Neanderthal an ape-man. He said he had a great toe like an ape, and he walked bent over, and he shuffled along like an ape. Boll said Neanderthal only had very rudimentary speech. Ugh, and that kind of stuff. In 1909, the Illustrated London News published a drawing of Neanderthal as a stooped, hairy ape man with a club in his hand. The drawing by František Kupka was based on Bolle's description. In 1919, H.G. Wells said Neanderthal stooped forward and could not hold his head erect. He was chinless and perhaps incapable of speech. In 1930, the Field Museum in Chicago set up a display of a Neanderthal family living in a cave like animals. This model appeared in countless textbooks, encyclopedias, magazines, newspapers, and museums. That view prevailed for nearly half a century. Since the 1960s, scientists have been re-examining Neanderthal. They now admit that he could talk, and he did not walk like an ape. Neanderthal was reclassified as a Homo sapien, meaning a man rather than any kind of ape. Recent depictions of Neanderthal show him more human, but he still looks like a Stone Age caveman because they want to perpetuate this myth. So here's what they had him looking like in the 1930s. By the 1970s, they have him, you can see he's standing up straight and tall. That's in the Chicago Field Museum. You can see the difference. This is the Smithsonian Natural History Museum. Here is the American Museum of Natural History. This is the Victoria Museum, British Museum of Natural History. In truth, Neanderthals were simply men. They were sons of Adam, just like us. There never has been a Stone Age. Some men have lived in caves, but there are no cavemen as we think of them, and as we've been told there are. In fact, someone told me just this week of a very scary demonic situation they had in a cave. But this whole idea of cavemen, we need to recognize that's something perpetuated by evolution. Neanderthal was long used as evidence of human evolution from apes, but it was a myth. Then there's Lucy. Lucy is a name given to the fossils of an ape that is supposed to be a missing link between apes and man. The creature was given a human name for advertising purposes. Many museums feature models of Lucy. Here's the Museum of Man in San Diego. Here's what it looks like in the Michigan State University Museum, Smithsonian Museum of Natural History, British Museum of Natural History, Chicago Field Museum, American Museum of Natural History in New York City. The fossil bones were found in 1974 in Ethiopia by Donald Johansen. The fossil was named Lucy because the Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds was playing at the camp party that night. Johansen was showered with international acclaim. Lucy lifted him from relative obscurity to fame and fortune, which reminds us that evolutionists are highly motivated to prove evolution. Here are the bones they found. The creature seems to have stood around 106, 107 centimeters or 3.5 feet high. The evolutionary name is Australopithecus afarensis. Australopithecus is the name that evolutionists have given to apes that they believe were the predecessors to man. Johansen and other scientists claim that Lucy walked upright, which was the first step toward becoming human. Textbooks and museums depict Lucy as a short, hairy ape woman. She has an ape-like head, but human arms and hands and human legs and feet. This is the model at the British Museum of Natural History in London. But Lucy is an evolutionary fable. Even many evolutionists don't believe that the creature walked upright. There's no consensus of opinion, and yet the drawings always depict it walking like a man or woman. Dr. Solly Zuckerman of the University of Birmingham in England, he and his team of scientists studied the fossils of Australopithecus for 15 years. They should know a little bit about it by then. And they said this: they're just apes. That's all they are, just apes. They carried their heads like apes and not like man. Zuckerman was not a Christian. He didn't believe in creation. But he was persecuted by evolutionists for questioning the ape-man theory. This is Bill Jungers of the Stony Brook Institute. He said Lucy's legs were too short to walk like a man. Randall Sussman and Jack Stern of that same university said they described Lucy's hands and feet as being long and curved, typical of a tree-dwelling ape. This is Randall Sussman. He said that the creature's curved ape-like finger bones and its long arms relative to its legs speak of tree living. Charles Oxnard of the University of Southern California said the creature's big toes stuck out as in chimpanzees. So you can see the chimpanzee there to the left, the human to the right, and you can see how there's this huge gap between the two. Now, you and I have a tiny gap God put there, but they've got a huge gap. Russell Tuttle of the University of Chicago said curved fingers and toes are ape-like for grasping tree branches. Christine Tardieu, anthropologist in Paris, Lucy's locking mechanism was not developed. She said, the locking mechanism in the knees allows humans to stand upright comfortably. You know, it's your ability to lock your knees in place, and we do that all the time. But it says Lucy did not have that. Dr. Fred Spoor, University College at London, using CT scans of Lucy's inner ear canals, he concluded they did not walk habitually upright. Dr. Jack Stern Jr. said Lucy walked funny, not like humans. Dr. Eric Stockstad said Lucy had the morphology that was classic for knuckle walkers. And a macaque monkey Kathmandu was seen walking upright for about 30 meters, but he couldn't do it easily or naturally. It's not something done much. The Lucy reconstructions are fables. This is not science. There are a number of differences. She didn't have human hands, yet the models have human hands. Here's American Museum of Natural History. Notice, it looks very much like your hand would look. British Museum of Natural History, Chicago Field Museum, American Museum of Natural History, Museum of Man, San Diego. She didn't have human feet, yet the models have human feet. Remember, we just showed the difference between the two. Here it is at the British Museum of Natural History. Here it is at the same place there in London. American Museum of Natural History, Michigan State University Museum, the St. Louis Zoo. St. Louis Zoo has Lucy on display with human feet and hands. No feet or hand bones were found. The purpose of the display is not for education, but for indoctrination in evolution theory. She didn't have human proportioned legs, yet the models have human proportioned legs. She didn't have human proportioned arms, yet the models have human proportioned arms. All of the evolutionary stories about ape-men are fairy tales. They've never explained how an ape could make the giant leap to become a man. For an ape to evolve into a man would require changes that would be miraculous. Let's look at a few. The ape would have to evolve human posture. The bone structure is very different between the two. There are many major structural features that allow man to walk upright. God's given us fine balance. He's given us a flat face that looks ahead. He's given us an upright skull. We have an S-shaped curved spine, so head and trunk are balanced over center of gravity. You ever notice that? The way we've got a bit of a curve to our spine, but it keeps the center of gravity balanced. You've got the extendable hips. We've got large forward-facing knee joint aligned under the hip joint with its mechanical axis behind the line of gravity. We have a wide curved pelvis, angled femur bones, fully extendable knee joints that lock in upright position, long legs, we have arched feet, and we have strong big toes tightly bound to and aligned with the other toes, as opposed to the big toe of apes, which is like a flexible thumb. What a difference between the two. The ape would have to evolve the amazing human hand. The ape's hand has been called the foot hand because it's designed for walking as well as grasping. Unlike the ape hand, the human hand is capable of precise grip and manipulation of objects. It's capable of playing the piano and performing brain surgery. Someone said a chimp can't power grip a screwdriver, throw a baseball, or play a guitar. It cannot make the three-way chuck. This thing you and I can do that lets us hold a pen or a brush. Ape can't do it. The human thumb is so superior to the ape's thumb that it has been called the 24-carat thumb by researchers. Sir Isaac Newton said, in the absence of any other proof, the thumb alone would convince me of God's existence. Even evolutionists call the human hand a miracle of biomechanics, but they never explain how evolution can perform miracles. The ape would have to evolve huge new resources in the brain to control the human hand. The human primary motor cortex in the brain is 4 times larger than a chimpanzee's, Craig Beidler says in his Proof of God in the Palm of Your Hand. The ape would have to evolve the amazing human nervous system that's necessary to control his hands and legs in a human fashion so his arms and hands can perform feats that an ape cannot perform. The nervous system is like electrical wiring in a building. The wires are complex nerve cells that run from the brain to every part of the body. That's what feels pain. The brain has neurons that send the signals to the rest of the body, and there are 100 billion neurons in the human brain. Wonderfully and fearfully made, aren't we? The signals travel along the nerves at 38,000 kilometers per hour. So that if you stub your toe, almost instantly your brain picks it up and says, ow. Well, your mouth says, ow. All of that happens that fast because of what the nerves do. This system enables the hands to do amazing things such as play the piano. You ever watch someone play a piece where everything's really, 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 really fast? Like almost smoke coming out of their fingers, as it were, you know. Well, recently scientists have discovered that the tendons in the hand themselves are intelligent and actually perform mathematical computations to assist the hand in performing the brain's commands. Our experiments show, said this particular report, that the tendon network of the fingers performs logic computation to preferentially change torque production capabilities. To help us understand, think of a typist. A skilled typist visually processes up to 8 keys in advance. You know, the kind that can do 80, 90 words a minute. They have worked out that 8 keys in advance are visually being processed. You're looking at 8 keys before your hand is actually typing it. And the tendons and muscles begin performing the keystrokes about 3 characters in advance of striking the keys. So again, it just happens so fast, and your brain is able to work with the muscles in your hands and the tendons in your hands to do all that in an amazing way. Their research shows the uniqueness of the human hand. They said our results highlight the biomechanics, uniqueness, and versatility of human fingers by showing that the nervous system and tendon network work synergistically to reach different regains of torque actuation. So they're working together to be able to get that done quicker than even you otherwise could. Scientists are finding this intelligence everywhere. This form of information processing at the macroscopic scale is a new instance of the emerging principle of non-neurosomatic logic found to perform logic computation such as in cellular networks. In other words, mobile phones and the networks for all that. This amazing complexity to that. The body is at that same level or better. We're talking about what the ape would have to evolve. The next thing, the ape would have to evolve human intelligence. The intelligence that landed us on the moon, intelligence that flies and creates, million-dollar jets and so forth. None of this explains where man's thoughts originate in the first place. The brain is a biological machine. It does not explain man's thoughts. Only a God-given spirit can do that. The ape would have to evolve human speech. The ability to speak is built into human brains, said John Mackay. He said the potential to speak any language is hardwired into the brain. The child's brain takes in, analyzes, and resynthesizes the language it hears. The muscle control needed for speech is very complex and comes built into the human brain. Speech involves precision control of breathing muscles, as well as the face, tongue, and larynx. This does not exist in apes. Neither does the precise control of the arms and hand required for writing and drawing. In the 1970s, there was a chimpanzee named Nim Chimpsky, raised as a human and taught sign language. He could not understand anything more than simple commands. The longest string of signed words Nim ever signed was, "Give orange, me, give, eat, orange, me, eat, orange, give me, eat, orange, give me, you." After years of training, Nim lacked the language capacity of a human toddler. A toddler can do better than that. All of these miraculous changes would have to occur at the genetic level by blind mutations if an ape could turn into a human. No one has ever demonstrated that this happened, or even that it is scientifically possible. Even speaking from an evolutionary standpoint, we must ask why Lucy would evolve upright walking and why natural selection would allow her to survive. Michael Pittman brings this out. He taught biology at Cambridge University, and he wrote Adam and Evolution. He said if a group of them decided to swing down from the trees and become Homo erectus on the plain, upright gait would be the last thing they would want. If an ape gradually evolved human walking, it would start with some kind of clumsy part ape, part human walk. It wouldn't have the speed of a monkey or of a human. It would be a crippled ape, and like a four-winged fruit fly, it would not survive. Rolling like a boat in high seas and still wearing that tiny chimpish head, he'd have had little chance in the survival stakes. Ape-men are a myth. God made us in his own image, as Genesis 1:27 says. God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him. Male and female created he them. And so this is, don't let anyone paint you as an animal. You are higher than the animal kingdom.